Hello YouTube, this is my first commentary for a video, and I'm going to talk about Euro 2012, the actual tournament and the game, the DLC that EA released for the tournament. I was actually going to do this video before the final as like a preview, but I tried to do it on I had like a Skype headset and the sound quality wasn't very good, so I decided to buy a Logitech USB desktop microphone, which I'm using right now, to record it instead, and it's arrived today, so I'm using it now. And in hindsight, it was probably a good thing that happened, because if I had have done a preview for the final, I was going to go on about how I fancied Italy's chances to win it, partly because they'd done really well in the tournament before the final, especially against Germany. They were very impressive. And Spain had they'd got through, but they hadn't played to their full potential at any stage really in the competition, so it looked like it was going to be a decent final. But then obviously it went completely in Spain's favour. They won 4-0 and played the kind of football that we've waited all tournament for them to play, really. So yeah, that was a big win in the final, and Italy just weren't in the game at all. Didn't help that they conceded an early goal, and once they'd done that, obviously they had to try and get out and attack, which is dangerous against Spain, and you can't really do it anyway because they've always got the ball. So yeah, Spain deserved winners in the end. They only really played particularly well in one game, but they beat the teams that were out in front of them, and that's all they had to do. Against France, I mean, France didn't play very well, never really threatened, and they got the job done. The Portugal game, the semi-final, was poor, really. Very disappointing match. Ronaldo didn't play very well. A lot of people expected him to do the business for Portugal after he'd done well before that. He'd scored 3 goals, but had a bad game, and then the whole debacle of the penalties. I mean, if you're a good penalty taker, you've got to take a penalty. You can't just leave it to chance like he did, just so that he could possibly take the winning penalty. Spain are good at penalties. You can't take chances like that against them. And he paid the price. He didn't take a penalty, and they lost. So I think justice was done there, probably. And Portugal did pretty well to get to the semi-finals, but honestly, I don't think they were that good a team. I mean, they played the Czech Republic in the quarters, who weren't that good either. So, you know, whoever won that game, they always knew they were probably going to face Spain, and that they were probably going to lose. I mean, Portugal did give it a good go against Spain. They limited the number of chances that they had, but they didn't have any real attacking threat. I mean, Ronaldo had a great chance at the end that he squandered, and they didn't really have anyone else apart from Ronaldo. He was pretty much carrying the team, I felt. They've got some decent players, but not world-class standard. Germany, of course, didn't get to the final, which was probably the big surprise of the tournament, because, well, apart from the Dutch's failure, but Germany were really expected to challenge Spain. I would have quite liked them to get to the final, really, because they were playing decent football before they played Italy, and it all just fell apart for them. Italy, of course, are Germany's bogey side. They've never lost to them in a major tournament, and it struck again, and Balotelli actually came to the party that night, scoring both of Italy's goals and generally playing very well. So yeah, that was good from him, and we were denied a Germany-Spain final, which probably would have been closer, but to be honest, I was quite pleased because I had Italy in a sweepstakes, so I got a prize. Even though they didn't win the final, they still got to the final, so I was quite pleased with that. But probably for the neutral, it would have been better to see a game between the two best teams, who were Spain and Germany, really. But this is competition football, it's knockout football, and that's the risk that Italy took, that Germany took. Apart from that, I mean, the Dutch obviously were the big shock, not getting through and playing pretty poorly on the whole. only scoring 2 goals and conceding 5 in their 3 games. Losing to Denmark was really the killer for them, I think, even though it was only their first game. But after that, they knew that they were going to have to play Germany and Portugal, and Germany were already probably favourites to win that game, which they did. And then when it came to their match against Portugal, they had to win, I think it was by 2 or 3 goals in order to get through, and obviously hope that Denmark didn't get a result, which they didn't, but they still lost to Portugal. And that was when Ronaldo first started to play well. And yeah, I think that really for the Netherlands, they have good attacking players. Van Persie, Sneijder, Huntelaar and Van der Vaart, of course, but they just didn't really do it for them. And defensively, they've looked a bit weak all competition, conceded some fairly sloppy goals, and you know, you can't afford to do that in a European Championship, so they got knocked out. Simple as that. Elsewhere, I'd say Group D was obviously England and France. It was probably the worst of the 4. Well, no, the worst of 4 groups was definitely Group A, but I think that the quality of the 2 teams that got through from D was not really that superior to the Czechs or the Greeks. I mean, England didn't really pose much attacking threat in their quarter-final. They didn't have much of the ball, and they weren't fit enough as far as I'm concerned. And they just weren't very adept at holding onto the ball and showing the kind of skill that you'd expect from a top European team, which shows that they're sort of just behind the Italians, the Germans and the Spanish, which is kind of what we thought before the tournament. I think that Euro 2012 just proved it. They did okay at times, but even against Sweden and Ukraine, they just didn't hold on to the ball well enough against teams that they should really have been looking to dominate. I think their average possession for the competition was 39%, which is just shocking, really. That's like, you'd expect that from a second-rate nation, a team that wouldn't even qualify for a major tournament, so that's pretty poor. But when they did get the ball, they did okay with it, except for really against Italy, when they just ran out of ideas completely come the end of the game. They all just looked tired and worn out, and it's always cruel to lose on penalties, but I'd say that was fair enough for them to lose at that stage. And France, I mean, as soon as they lost to Sweden, it wasn't looking good. They never really showed the potential that they have. They've got some good players, but you know, you can't fault people like Nasri and Benzema. The quality of them. Ribery, I think, is a bit overrated, but yeah, that's my opinion. But once again, you know, another tournament for him where he hasn't really delivered the goods for his country, and that cost them, because from an attacking perspective against Spain, they just looked clueless, and it cost them. Yeah, so now on to my thoughts on the DLC, the add-on that EA did for FIFA 12, which was of the Euro 2012 tournament. And yeah, it was alright. Not much of an improvement on FIFA 12. It kind of feels like they just put the extra stadiums in, did all the menus and stuff, and then got the commentators to say a couple of things, and that was about it. Gameplay wise, there's not much, there's no change really from FIFA 12, although I guess that's kind of what you expect from a game like this anyway. And game modes, not really enough for me. They had you've got the offline competition, which you couldn't do offline multiplayer either, which was surprising. It's always nice to be able to play offline with your friends, but you didn't get that opportunity. You had the online tournament rather, where you could play against other online players and try and win the tournament, which was fun. I enjoyed that. That's good, but that's been around since the World Cup game, and it might have been in the Euro 2008 game as well, but I'm not sure. And the expedition mode, which was essentially rubbish, just not really much point to that at all, unless you've got a lot of time on your hands and you enjoy playing the worst nations in the game, because that's what you spend a lot of the time doing. And the challenges, which we've also seen before, they didn't have the opportunity to captain your country, which they had in the World Cup game, the last game. There was no Be a Pro option at all, which was disappointing, because that's been quite a popular mode. And yeah, on the whole, I think if they'd have charged more than $14.99 for it, FIFA would have got a bit of a pasting, and they pretty much have anyway, because they've given us a half-hearted game, really. I don't know if they're planning to do the same for the next World Cup, but I suggest to them either if they're going to do a DLC, try and make it more like a proper game, rather than just a little add-on, or just, you know, release a full-priced game for the next World Cup and actually make it worth your while. Another problem I had with it was that it didn't really capture the atmosphere of the tournament very well. It didn't feel like you were playing in a European Championships. There was no, like with the World Cup South Africa game, you had the vuvuzelas in the stadium, and the stadiums just felt more atmospheric, more general crowd noise, and the things that just down to the things that the commentators said. You know, they had a little bit for every stadium where they talked about that and some of the players in the tournament. They didn't really have that for this game. They just, like, some of the things they said about the European Championships were very generalised and not very interesting. And it just feels like they didn't really put much effort into that, which is a shame. And you don't really get much sense of occasion from it, but still, hopefully they'll learn from that. And obviously the gameplay being of FIFA 12 Origin is still very solid. You still get some quite funny moments with the impact engine, and you still get tactical defending and everything, so it's a solid game, but it could have been a lot better. It's basically FIFA 12 with some different stadiums and commentary, which is just a bit disappointing, really. Yeah, that's about it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you'd like it, that would make me very happy. If you'd subscribe, that would make me even happier. I'm going to plan to do some more videos for FIFA, and probably look at some other games as well, like maybe F1 or Call of Duty. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll speak to you soon.